All right, hello once again. We are here at Everfree Northwest for the Equestria Inquirer and Everfree Radio, and I am Tech Rat along with
Joe Stevens.
And we are here right now with a very special guest, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. William Anderson. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit with us and chat with us. We really appreciate it. Well, I guess the first question that I have for you in regards to getting involved with the show, how exactly did that come about? I mean, did somebody come up to you and say, we have a cartoon about My Little Pony that we want you to score? How did that all originate? How did you get involved?
It was a select group of people were invited to submit an approach for the show. I was given a creative brief from the people involved, Lauren Faust, and I got invited because I've done a lot of animation, and Linda Steiner knew my work and asked that I be included. And so I don't know how many people there were, 5, maybe a few more, and they listened to all the submissions blind, meaning that they didn't know who wrote what, and they picked mine, and that's how I got the assignment for the underscore.
And what were your thoughts when you initially did your submission, knowing it was going to be for a My Little Pony cartoon? What were you thinking going into that?
Well, I approach everything the same way. I like getting the Bible, looking at the characters, reading a few of the scripts, talking to the creative people about what their vision is for the role of the music, and then I try to sit down and do something I think works and that I can stand behind and feel proud of. And in this case, it did end up being, the score actually ended up being a lot different than what my test piece was. For the test piece, I kind of did, it was a lot more psychedelic folk. There were mellotron flutes and guitar, and it had kind of a folky, psychedelic, retro vibe. And as you know, the score has turned into more of a traditional orchestral cinematic.
And so you
score.
wrote that folksy one just on the Bible, then? You didn't have any animation to go off of?
No, I had a minute test piece.
You had a minute test?
Yeah.
Would you be able to share what the pilot, was that part of the pilot that you wrote some?
Let me think. Well, I'm sure it was stuff that came back from what they had for show 1. Can't remember what exactly was in it.
The Nightmare Moon episode?
Yeah, oh no, I remember show 1. I'm trying to remember what that original test piece was. I don't know what they cobbled it together from.
Right.
But everybody that submitted got the same deck. We all had the same deck of cards. Here's your creative brief. Here's the 1-minute piece. Get us what you think in a couple of weeks, and we'll let you know.
And so one of the things I think that everyone really appreciates is the amazing work and the contribution that every aspect of the show, from the score to the VAs to the writing. Was it apparent at the beginning when you were starting that it would explode to this, or has it just been absolutely shocking to see this? Obviously, you do your absolute best at this, but what has your reaction been to people just being huge fans of the show?
It is absolutely shocking, and I wasn't ready for it all. And I actually didn't even know about it till season 2. Everybody would, tell me, hey, the show's really getting traction, or like, Will, you've got a lot of fans out there, and I'm busy. I'm a working fool. I do a show a week, and it's a 50-hour week, and I don't have time to fiddle about going to see if people are liking it or not. I need to get it done for the network, get it on air, make sure that I think what I'm doing is really good. Mm-hmm. And really, I was clueless about it until about the 2nd season. And actually, the thing that happened that made me know about it is I Googled myself, and somebody had done a portrait of me as a My Little Pony character. And it was so cool. I put it on my webpage, and I went to go thank him, and I couldn't thank him without joining DeviantArt because I couldn't thank him. Mm-hmm. So I just joined. I thought nothing, I joined, okay, whatever. And I said, hey, man, thanks. That is the coolest thing anything has ever done for me, and I love it, and I hope it's okay with you. I put it on my webpage. And then I got an email a couple of days later. Is that you really, Will? Yeah. And well, you have like, I don't know what it was, 80 zillion people now on your page,
and not a single piece of art posted.
No. So that's when I really first kind of went to,
And once you found out about this incredible fandom that is so far removed from the original target demographic of the show, did that have any sort of impact to how you approached your work from that point forward?
Well, it doesn't affect the creative of what I write, but it does affect that I set a pretty high bar for myself, scoring these things as little films every week. And
I
now
like that approach. That's really cool. It's a little film and everything.
that's how I look at it. I try to find the through line, the main, the stories, the what is this about? Because they all have some sort of integral theme and who the main character is, and I try to write a score that reflects that and is about that, and not just what I call JBO, just a bunch of cues. I hate just a bunch of cues. I want continuity.
Yeah, we could just play the theme song over and over again in the background if you wanted to, but no, we're not. We're going to take it another level, I think.
So in respect of the fandom, there's people that appreciate the scores and they post them, and so what it does to me is it just like, oh shit, I have to do. Oh darn, I have to do this again.
We'll
A
edit that.
little
It's
bit
okay.
too late to take that back, but
We'll
this is
put a
not
yay
going
in
live
there.
yet, so we can bleep that out later. Don't worry.
But you know what I mean? So, I mean, every week I know that a lot of people are going to be looking at the score and dissecting it and talking about it. And so I really try to keep the quality up.
Yeah,
Right.
So it seems like you really put a lot of effort into wanting to make every episode special and unique. And I'm just curious, what kind of environment do you work in when you sit down to think about how you're going to score an episode? Like what kind of environment inspires you? Where do you get your inspiration from when you're writing these scores?
Deadlines.
I
Do
think
it now,
that's
and it's
everybody's
great.
inspiration, no matter what you do, is deadlines.
Without a deadline, I'd fiddle around with it for the rest of my life.
So you don't have like a beautiful landscape out your window that you stare at and go, oh, now I have some ideas. Nothing like that?
I have the coolest studio on earth. I love my cave. It is such a wonderful atmospheric place to write. But I use a lot of technology, and everything has to be exactly right. And I have all the toys, and I know how to use them, and I love them, and that's where I do my thing.
So walk us through that process. I think everyone's fascinated by, obviously you have the animation there to see it and you're scoring it. So walk us through, when you see Pinkie Pie bouncing around, what kind of thing, how do you think,
Well,
I
actually,
need to add
that's a
music
question
to that?
first, is that do you have the animation when you're working
Right.
on the score?
Absolutely. Here's where the scoring begins. I start, technically I'm in what they call post. When they finish locking the show and it's cut to time and the little slugs, meaning black segments, are in for the commercial breaks. This is exactly how it'll be seen on TV. And what happens then is all the dialogue people and the effects people and the composers, we all start crafting our stuff to go exactly to that. And so I get that locked print, the dialogue is in it. And I get with Jason on the phone, and we go through every single scene. And we discuss what the role of the music is. He says, you know what, I think this should be this. I say, that sounds great, Jason. He says, let's hit this, but what do you think, Will? I say, I don't know. I think that it feels like it could be open there. And we make notes all the way through the show. It's my map. And then after that, I take that map and I think about the approach, and I start sketching out themes, and we put together all the music. And I make a little QuickTime movie that has the dialogue and my score in it, and I send it back to Jason, and Jason reviews it, and he gives me notes. Will, this is terrific. Will, what were you thinking? Will, this is horrible. Will, I love this. And could this start earlier? Could this start later? I don't like that sound. He gives me a page of notes, or sometimes a few, sometimes a lot. It just depends. Music is very subjective.
Right.
So he gives me all that stuff, and I make all the changes, and then we have what I call a disaster check. I let him see all the changes before I master it and send it to Dick and Rogers to do the mix. And the disaster check second review is usually. It's just that. It's just so that we can make sure everything's right, and then I ship the show, and then we start the next show immediately after that. And that process is exactly 1 week.
So 1 week, one episode.
Yes, and it's one after another.
And so when you're doing those, it's fascinating the different emotions that you can get from what the characters are achieving. Do the writers give you all right, this moment has to be really sad, and that goes into your thoughts of creating emotion with music in the different scenes?
No, the writers don't give me anything like that. Jason and I talk about that, and I sometimes suggest things, like, hey, you know what? She's so sad here, but the scene is so strong and acted so well. Maybe it's better to, why don't we try it in the clear and just leave it alone? Or I mean, we discussed different ways, or like how, there's an art to this. Like, let's, before the transition to whatever, some new location, which I shouldn't say because I'm thinking about something that you guys haven't seen yet. But, say that transition happens here. I say, you know what, let's start playing like we're there at the end of the scene before. Prelay it, let's set it up. And then when we make that transformation into the next scene, we bridge into the next scene, it kind of pulls you into it.
It makes the transition less intense.
Yeah. It makes it smooth, and it kind of like in your subconsciously, you start to get ready for it before it happens.
Because the music can actually help to tell the story and bring the person through.
That's totally the job.
Yeah.
Right.
So, well, we're talking about all the different scores that you've done for the show. Are there any particular pieces or parts of scores that you've done that stick out in your mind that you were particularly proud of, or like I was really happy with how that particular scene came out, or anything like that?
Just captured the moment brilliantly.
Because I certainly have one of my favorites,
right? And
that was in the Mare Duel episode near the very end, where Rainbow Dash is trying to chase down Mare Duel, and you're getting like these hints of Danny Elfman in there. It made me wonder whether you were like maybe watching an episode of Batman while you were scoring that particular part of the show. Do you have any like scenes like that just stick in your mind that you really were proud of?
Yeah, I do, and it's a weird one. I guess my favorite centerpiece scene from everything I've done, and this is weird, when Pinkie Pie has the party by herself and her rock friends and stuff, and she's really just freaked out.
I, for some reason, thought that would work.
Yeah,
there's so much, exactly. It's a solo scene, so you have to rely on music so much for that.
And it's very, very like bizarre and creepy going on in the back.
Bizarre. And I also want to say I wrote that with Christopher G., who's a wonderful composer and orchestrator, and I can't, we wrote that together, and that's my favorite scene.
I can certainly see why. That's a lot of fans' favorite scenes, actually.
So
a lot of fans' favorite episode, for that matter.
It's so surreal.
It's so funny.
Her eyes just go in different directions.
You kind of went back to the funky original of your original idea with the funky weirdness.
Yeah.
But you mentioned, obviously, Tecker was talking about the different Danny Elfman and other inspiration. What kind of inspiration do you draw when you're doing music, both for Ponies and for the other shows that you work on?
Well, I'm a student and lover of all the great film scores, and I stand in the shadows of all these people, John Williams and James Newton Howard and James Horner and Danny Elfman and so many, and the caliber of work that's done it's just so remarkable, and also the quality of recording and the mixing and the art of how they frame it to picture and help tell the story, or when they use it, not use it, and I'm fascinated by it. So I'm always being informed by everything I see all the time, Mm-hmm. And I'm an easy audience. I notice other film scoring people will rip scores apart. My general sense is I go to almost always. Trent Reznor fumbled, in my opinion, only, and it's subjective. But the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, his score was so wrong and awful. In the first 5 minutes of the scene of the film, I couldn't watch the film. My personal opinion. Nothing. He's a great artist. But generally, I just look at the stuff and I go, "Oh my God! This is so well written, so well recorded, so well mixed."
There's something recent in memory that comes out. I think we talked to Stephen Andrews, who referenced How to Train Your Dragon and those type of movies. Anything recently that you can think of that you particularly liked?
I liked How to Train Your Dragon. What a great score! What did I just see? I saw the new Batman movie. I didn't care for it much. I thought the other two were better. But and Hans Zimmer and his team. God, the sound they get is just so relentlessly primal and driving. Just to be able to create that was amazing, and I thought it was a very effective score. It's not like it was so harmonically brilliant, but it was just it's not. There's not a lot of teeth in the harmony. It's all just right, and the sound he got was amazing.
Well, especially when you're working with probably like $1 billion music budget to do a whole orchestra and everything. Now, we don't hear a lot of live orchestrations for Ponies. What do we ever have any of the live music, or is it how is the music itself created? Is it in the computer, or do you ever get instruments in there?
It's all computer. And it's all really good sample libraries of orchestral players playing. And it's the same stuff that Danny Elfman and everybody uses. I mean, you've got your East-West Sounds a symphonic orchestra library, you've got the Vienna, you've got the LA scoring strings, you've got the Wallander stuff, you've got the Chris Hine horns, you've got, there's all these kind of premier companies that make wonderful orchestral libraries, Symphobia, and we kind of all own as many of them as we can afford, and then it's taking the time to learn how to drive them, and setting them up in a big pallet, and learning how to use them right.
Right. And the fascinating thing about the fandom, what we've seen, there's a lot of fan-made music. Have you had a chance to sample any of the fan-made music?
Well, you were at Pony Stock last night, I believe.
Yeah, no,
correct.
I went in.
Yeah. And what was your experience like that? And I mean, not just the not just the music, but the environment as well. I'm just curious.
It was so much fun, and it was really, I was really.
You were jumping up and down with everybody.
Yeah, I was.
You were waving your hands like you just didn't care. It was amazing.
I don't care. I'm glad I shut everything off and came up here, It was fun. The thing that really, really got me is when I said, "Hi, I'm Will Anderson," and the place just like, I felt like I was in the Beatles or something.
You are a celebrity in this fandom, whether you want to be or not.
I really, I know that I have followers and stuff, but I mean, that was really, I did not expect that, It was, wow,
Right. Yeah. And so we had Mike the Microphone, we had the other ones. But did you see a lot of the orchestral versions? There's a lot of pop music and a lot of vocalized music that goes along. Have you had a chance to sample any of the orchestrated, the symphonic versions of Pony fan-made music?
Sure, but not a lot. I'm a working fool, and I have a long week, and occasionally I go out there and listen to some stuff, and some of it's good, some of it's marginal, but even if it's marginal, I mean, these are people trying. You have to learn how to do what you do somewhere, right. Mm-hmm. And then there's some stuff that's just remarkable, like, hey man, stop, stop doing that, Yeah.
Well, I mean, everybody, like you said, has to start somewhere. Where did you start? Like when you first got into this whole business, what were your beginnings?
I will abbreviate the story. I gave up on my music career. I was in a band, and I never was a star, and so I was getting a little old to play star, and so I got a job in public relations and advertising, and I managed pro audio accounts because I knew a lot about the tape recorders, and I managed Tascam, and the creative director needed some music for a Yamaha all-terrain vehicle ad, and I said, hey, I'll do it for free. They didn't have budget, and all the creative people in the agency snickered because, I mean, in advertising, the creatives are on one side and the executives, or suits they're called, are on the other, and there the two shall meet. And when they heard a suit had offered to do a suit, the music, they were just like, eh. But the creative director loved it and approved it. And the guy who produced it went over to Ogilvy and Mather and did another spot. Hey, Will, do you want to do this? And I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. So I wrote the music again, and I sent it to him, and he called me back and he said, Will, it's great. They approved it. Send me a bill for $8. And so I sent him a bill for $800, and he called me and he goes, Will, it's $8,000. And this is something that took me 4 hours to write.
Wow. So there you go, fans. Whatever you're doing, if you can be creative, you can be successful. I think that's a good story of how, if you weren't a musician, but you said you wanted to do music, and so you went and you made that happen, and now you do music for a living.
Well, there's a post thing on that.
Okay.
Just let me
didn't jump the gun
on that.
Okay.
When I went to advertising, I quit my music career. Mm-hmm. I was like in my late 20s, and I was going, you know what? I'm not a star. I better go get a regular job. It's time to stop playing, like I can do this for a living. I need to be responsible. So it was when I gave up on my dreams of having a career in music that they fell into my lap. So there's something there, too.
Yeah. So we almost didn't have you sitting here today.
Well, it just happened. That's how it happened. It was weird. I gave up and won.
Wow.
Sometimes I think the message there is that, I don't know.
Well, it can be very inspiring because, you know, you never know where your life is going to lead you. And even if you think you're going to have to give up on a dream at some point, it may come back into play at some point again in the future. You just never know.
Yeah, it's like the guy who chases the butterfly, wants that butterfly so badly, and he's running around chasing it, and it's banging, and he's falling, and scraping his knees and hitting the trees, and then he sits down and goes, oh, man, and then the butterfly just comes and lights on his shoulder, you know? I mean,
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
have to fight.
That's
The
an awesome
entire time
metaphor.
you narrated that, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, Will Anderson writing composition to this little animatronic or animated scene where a guy's chasing a butterfly.
I'm doing it.
You're doing it right now. What does it sound like?
Well, the character is called Stickman, and it's kind of the same story I just told you about, and I've written a bunch of them, and the people on, well, DeviantArt people said, draw something, and I said, I can't draw a Stickman, so I drew a Stickman, and it became popular.
So is this sort of like a side project that
It is.
Yeah, oh wow,
It
okay.
is. I have a really good animator, Will Kuna, working with me, and he's doing sketches and working on the animation, and the first one we're doing is Stickman and the Butterfly.
Stickman and the butterfly.
Wow.
And when can we hear that?
And when can we expect that?
Well, okay, we're done with the storyboard. We're done with the character design and sketches, and we're working on, he's doing the animation now. He works at Titmouse, and so he's busy. And I'm busy, but we're in the final third of the project. It'll be like a minute and a half long, something like that.
Titmouse, that's the company that makes a lot of Adult Swim projects,
Yes,
right?
exactly. He's a skilled guy. He worked on Curious George, and he loves the project too. And we both are taking it like, we're doing this because just for the love of doing it without any, we don't care if it sells, and we're not like, okay, let's go pitch it to blah blah. We're just, he loves the story, and I love writing and doing weird stuff, and we decided let's make some weird stuff.
Some weird stuff.
Speaking of weird stuff,
Oh, weird stuff. We're going that direction.
how about that for a segue? You posted something recently on your DeviantArt account, which just made the fandom totally explode. And that was a picture with you with a particular parody artist named Weird Al Yankovic. Now, ever since back when we were anticipating season 2, there have been rumors of this gentleman in some way, shape, or form getting involved in My Little Pony. And I know that when you posted in your DeviantArt account, you said there was a little bit more to the story. You couldn't quite, you didn't videotape it all. You got like at the very end because I guess the camera phone wasn't working properly, or something like that.
To turn it on.
Your daughter forgot to turn it on. Okay, all right.
When Al comes over, because I used to be in his band, I played and toured and recorded with him. And
What did you play in his band?
I played sax, guitar, trumpet, and keyboards, and sang.
Oh, that is fantastic.
And so he invited me down to the show, and afterwards I went backstage, and I go, Eleanor, when I wanted to do like a TMZ kind of thing, I go, when he comes over, turn on my camera and just record everything. And so I'm talking to him for a long time, and I turn around, and we're starting to talk about My Little Pony, and my daughter's just sitting there, with the camera, with my iPhone, just
texting or something.
looking clueless.
How can you squander this opportunity? What were you doing?
I was so disappointed and mad at her, and I tried, she's only 13, and I just like, let it go, Will, let it go, Will, let it go, Will. And then I go, Eleanor, turn it on. And so she turned it on, and then afterwards I go, thanks. And she goes, yeah, but Dad, I'm sorry, I turned it off when you hugged Al. She gets to the point where like 2 seconds of me talking to him about My Little Pony, and then just shuts it off. That's why the clip is so short.
So is there anything that we could maybe hear what you were talking to him before that we were able to share then with the community?
I can tell you what we talked about. We talked about he loves My Little Pony. All his fans love My Little Pony. Al wants to be a character on the show. And maybe a guest star or something. And I know on the other side of the table, they love the idea too. It's a perfect fit. The kind of fans that are down here, it would be a good just cross-fertilization thing. I think that these are compatible fan groups. By the way, his concert down at Pacific Amphitheater that I went to last week I think there were 20,000 people there just going
He's phenomenal
absolutely
live.
nuts.
I've seen him like 6 times.
Yeah.
He's an amazing performer.
He sang so well. He just killed it. So we were chatting about that, and he said he would be very interested, and so I said I know that they're trying to cook up some ideas for you. Why doesn't Jason give you a shot and you guys chit chat about how this might happen? And so that's about as much as I feel comfortable saying. Other than it was great to see him,
Well, we don't want to press you too
No,
much. I think
absolutely
that
not.
fans are just exceptionally excited about the possibility that it's out there, that it's possibly in the works. That
Yeah.
Everybody on both sides of the table wants to make this work.
we just need to get the lawyers to agree on things.
You need to sign the documents in the right places and whatever has to
Yeah,
happen.
I have nothing to do with that. Al wants to do it. They want to do it. Everybody wants to.
Well, he loves animation in general. He's done voices for other shows as well. He's done voices for Transformers.
It's
We're all getting giddy together here. We're all such big fans of Weird Al.
At the concert, he always runs tons of the films,
Yeah.
the interviews and stuff. And there's one thing where I felt small. It's like every animated show, every cartoon ever made has a
Has a cameo somewhere in it, yeah.
Where they say I'm just like Weird Al.
Well, it's interesting. You're coming full circle. Then you started out in his band,
Right.
and then you're a composer for another show, and now he's in your show.
Yeah. No, it's going to be fun.
He's not in your show yet. We
yeah.
don't want to talk about that, but he's working towards that.
There's a very real possibility.
There's
I
a
guess
very
you could
real
say.
possibility, and he's thrilled.
no comment, nothing official.
Yeah.
Don't.
This
do
is
not
all
repeat.
discussion right now. And just as an aside, too, if Weird Al, if you're watching, you should write a song based on My Little Pony as well. I think you need to put a pony song on your next album, but that's just me talking.
We won't ask. Yeah, that's unofficial request.
Yes, unofficial request.
Yeah, I agree.
So thank you so much, Will, for joining us. This was tons of fun.
Thank you so much, sir, for
And I
sitting
think
with
that
us.
one of the things that we always looked at, is there anything you want to say to the fans in the community who you have an opportunity here to look them directly and say anything to the fans?
I do. I want to just say you guys are 20% more awesome, and I really appreciate your your opinions and your support of the show, and that you're a fan of the music. And I will every single episode deliver the best that I can to you guys.
Well, that's all we'd expect. We love it so far, and just keep up the good work. Keep up the awesome work.
And if I fail, cut me some slack. I got a tough schedule.
I think we're going to love you no matter what, and we're all looking forward to season 3, and we're all looking forward to see how much your score adds to everything we're going to see in the new season. So, Will, again, thank you very much for chatting with us
My
today.
pleasure, guys.
So once again, I'm Joe Stevens,
And I'm Tech Rat.
and we're the Equestria Inquirer for Everfree Radio at Everfree Northwest. Stay tuned.
All right, hello once again. We are here at Everfree Northwest for the Equestria Inquirer and Everfree Radio, and I am Tech Rat along with...
Joe Stevens.
And we are here right now with a very special guest, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. William Anderson. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit with us and chat with us. We really appreciate it. Well, I guess the first question that I have for you in regards to getting involved with the show, how exactly did that come about? I mean, did somebody come up to you and say, we have a cartoon about My Little Pony that we want you to score? How did that all originate? How did you get involved?
It was a select group of people were invited to submit an approach for the show. I was given a creative brief from the people involved, Lauren Faust, and I got invited because I've done a lot of animation, and Linda Steiner knew my work and asked that I be included. And so I don't know how many people there were, 5, maybe a few more, and they listened to all the submissions blind, meaning that they didn't know who wrote what, and they picked mine, and that's how I got the assignment for the underscore.
And what were your thoughts when you initially did your submission, knowing it was going to be for a My Little Pony cartoon? What were you thinking going into that?
Well, I approach everything the same way. I like getting the Bible, looking at the characters, reading a few of the scripts, and as you know, the score has turned into more of a traditional orchestral cinematic.
And so you
score.
wrote that folksy one just on the Bible. Then you didn't have any animation to go off.
No, I had a minute test piece.
You had a minute test.
Yeah.
Would you be able to share what the pilot was? That part of the pilot that you wrote some?
Let me think. Well, I'm sure it was stuff that came back from what they had for show 1. Can't remember what exactly was in it.
The Nightmare Moon episode.
Yeah. Oh no, I remember talking to the creative people about what their vision is for the role of the music, and then I try to sit down and do something I think works and that I can stand behind and feel proud of. And in this case, it did end up being, the score actually ended up being a lot different than what my test piece was. For the test piece, I kind of did It was a lot more psychedelic folk. You know, there were mellotron flutes and guitar, and it had kind of a, you know, a folky, psychedelic retro vibe.